Hi, today we're going to do an easy level LeetCode problem called toSum using JavaScript. So the prompt is, given an array of integers nums and integers target, return indices of the two numbers such that they add up to target. You may assume that each input would have exactly one solution, and you may not use the same element twice. For this problem, I'm going to first write the pseudocode of how to solve it. Next, I'm going to write the actual code, and I'll end it with the time and space complexity. So I'm going to use objects to solve the problem. So first thing we will need to do is to create an object, and we need to use create an object so we can compare the numbers to each other to see if they add up to the target. So first step, create object. I'm going to name it numbers, and we use it to compare the values. So the next thing we will need to do is to loop through the nums array. Nums array. And we'll have to loop to do that so we can compare it. And inside, as we're looping through it, we have to find the value of what value would be needed from this current index to this. So 9 minus 2, so we subtract it. 9 minus 2 is 7. So we're going to see if our object holds the value 7. And if it doesn't, if it does, we return those indexes in an array. If not, we'll have to add those values to our object. So to do this, to stay organized, we're going to create variables for everything. So first, we want to create a variable for the current number we're looking at. Create variable, and we're going to call it current num. We're going to create a variable current num for the current index we're looking at. And next, we're going to create a variable target sum. So that's the value we need. So for this, the first one would be target of 9 minus 2 would be 7. So create variable target num from target minus current num. Next, we have to check if this target number will be inside our object. So we need a condition. Create condition to see if target num is inside nums our object. Sorry, numbers object. So if it is inside of it, target is inside of it, that means we have a match, and we can return those indexes. Return the matching index in an array. If it doesn't match any of it, we add those values to our object. Else add values to our object. And lastly, if none of these numbers match to the target, we return an empty array. So that's the basic pseudocode for this, and let's check it, write the code, actual code for it now. So first one we want to create the object, that numbers equals empty object. And next, we want to loop through the nums array for let I equals 0, I is less than nums dot length I plus plus. So that's the for loop we need. And inside of it, let's create the variables we want. So let current num, and that's going to be looking at the current index of it. So nums index of I. And now we need to know our target num. Let's change this to needed num so we don't get confused. So this is let needed num equals to the target minus the current number. So for this, let's look at back again. So 9 minus, so if we're starting with this one, the 2, 9 minus 2 would be 7 is the needed one. So target minus current num. Okay, now we need to create the condition to check to see if our needed number is inside the numbers. So for the first loop through, none of it will match, but as we go on, then we'll see if there's potential matches. If needed num in our numbers object. We create and inside of it, if it's true, we return what we needed. So return will be an array. So we will need the index of this needed num. So inside of this object, we're gonna set the needed num inside the object with the integer, and we're gonna get that value now here. Needed numbers, needed num and the current index I. And then if it's not inside of it, that's what we have to add it to our object. Else, so we go to our objects and we'll have to add the current num and we'll get the current index of the current I. So we'll get that. And once we loop through it, if none of it comes true, we just return empty in array. Okay, let me run the code and check if it works. Great. So yeah, this will match everything we need. So the time complexity, since it goes through one loop, we do a O notation of we do an N notation O of N because there's one loop. And the space complexity, since we use an object, it will also be O of N because the longer the problem is, the bigger the nums array is, the longer it is proportionally because of the object. And that is how to solve the two numbers problem on LeetCode using objects.